Here with the sunrise on a still Jupiter hour. This is Jupiter night and it's about to turn day, so it's about to turn into a Mars day. The ascendant is in Cancer. Moon has just crossed the sun, so we are after the new moon and is applying to oppose Pluto, which squares the nodes, squares Aries in Aries, which you kind of can't see here. And the midheaven is ruled by Mars here in the third house in Mercury sign, Mercury in the second. So, this episode is actually inspired by a comment by Tal on Twitter, and it was discussing the ethics of astrology and kind of how it's okay to use somebody's chart if you need to learn how to relate to them, but you should not do it publicly and definitely not to them. And I could not help but thinking of the things I said about dislunation, about Libra ascendant, and how sometimes something very rational can be, in different contexts, completely irrelevant. So first of all, for dislunation, it conjuncts Procyon. And Procyon was also the fixed star that is next to the midheaven of John F. Kennedy. But John F. Kennedy was most known, and I have a hidden episode about John F. Kennedy. You're gonna have to find it if you want to. And let me know in the comments if you found it. So I might think of a little prize for you if this is the case. So Procyon is known about sweetening it. If there is attack towards you, it's about sweetening it. And JF Kennedy was best known for de-escalation of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, so this is a very happy point in this whole quite intense juncture. And why am I saying all of this? Well, the nodes are already ruled by Venus and Mars respectively, and they are now squaring Pluto, with Mars ruling Rahu and Venus ruling Ketu. So assertion, the great I am, the focus on the self. But what do you do if you are a Libra ascendant? If you are a Libra ascendant, basically you have Ketu in your first house and Rahu in the seventh house. It means you deal with Venus and Mars things. What is Venus and Mars? It's connections, it's sex, penis and vagina, literally. Yes, it's also finances, the self versus the other, and so on and so forth. Artistic expression, okay, expression and action. And here with Pluto, Pluto is political, it's deeply psychological, squaring these nodes ruled by Venus and Mars. I'm sorry, but the personal is the political here. Of course, things are going to be public, of course, because Pluto, it's like the baby, okay? When a baby is born, it's just conceived, you need all kinds of science to tell you whether you are pregnant or not. Okay, you need this test, that test, because you don't see it. Okay, and after a while, you kind of see a belly. But after 9 months, you definitely see the baby coming out. Okay, hopefully alive and well. And Pluto is very much like this. So people think about Pluto as concealment and things that manage to stay hidden, both in the fact that we are in the Pluto sextile Neptune, that Neptune is about leaking stuff, okay? But it's also about something missing. And the fact that Pluto in itself is about delivery and birthing just as much as it is about concealing. It's transforming one situation to another. Even in the home, I'm having a Pluto transit, okay? Both the square, but also there's a nice, there will be sextile to my ascendant. So, even at home, when I had a big mess, I would either put Neptune or a Pluto symbol. And then let's say I would put a Pluto symbol, intuited to do this, and I would have a Pluto symbol. Even around my house, there's a big mess. I put the Pluto symbol on this mess. Then this corner in the room, not only do I eventually fix this mess and get rid or purge my emotions around this, and I had to learn how to do this so the emotions are not overwhelming, and it would turn into something new. Suddenly I would grow plants in it. Suddenly there would be, a spot for something new there. It redesigns the place. Okay, I'm not saying put Pluto symbol on things, like it's something that I was guided to do. It's not prescriptive. Pluto is a very intense planet, so yeah, okay. But the thing is with Pluto, it exposes that which was not tended to, so it can transform. And this exposure is public. On a mundane level, it is public. It means public things are going to arise. The outer planets are transpersonal. It's not about many people will be having things within their own personal life, but then there would be this both purge and exposure and birthing. Okay? For example, when I was Me Too veteran, in I think 2000, when I was the Me Too veteran, I had Rahu in my seventh house. Okay, when Rahu was in Virgo, before the Me Too actually, was purged, when Rahu was in Leo already. But then, basically, I was writing, but I could not write for myself. I had to write publicly, and I did not understand why. Okay, I have the ruler of my seventh opposing Pluto, and I did not understand. There were all kinds of ideas coming. Aries and Uranus were very much involved before I wrote my satire, and I asked myself, why do I need to say this publicly? Why do I need to write this publicly? It was very compulsive, and I even asked, in how many years am I advancing? Like, am I ahead of my time? Okay, which is very much an Aries question. How many years am I ahead of my time? Why don't people see this now? How many years do? And this was not about me thinking the sun, shines from my bum hole. It was more about, for how long will I have to be alone with this? Because I see that this is true. And then just a couple of, fortunately, not for many years, just a couple of months later, I'll switch into Leo, and the Me Too pandemic, you want to call it, kind of was exposed. We're going to have something very similar with Venus going retrograde in Leo, and a Mars ruled Rahu. So people are going to be discussing things of both Venus and Mars in a very assertive way, and they're going to be very open about it. They're going to expose things, basically. And they're gonna, what are they going to expose? They're going to expose, Pluto is in Capricorn, so they're going to expose people being mistreated, Aries, which is going to be with the North Node, by plutocracy, so by organizations, hidden organizations. Saturn, it rules witchcraft as well. Okay, witchcraft is not just a beautiful magic like, Temamundi and talismans. Witchcraft is also something that people practice to hurt each other, sometimes because they just want to liberate themselves from slavery, and sometimes literally, like, not with wisdom and not for good reason. So Saturn rules witchcraft. Okay, some certain types of witchcraft will be exposed that are done by organizations and hierarchical structures. So secret hierarchical societies. Okay, secret hierarchical societies might be exposed. We see exposure. We could not, before 2008, I don't think it was that accessible to just see videos about people saying, I was Freemason, these are certain Masonic rites that we have, this is the good thing about them, this is the horror about them, and people kind of exposing all kinds of secret cults, secret societies, tactics of gaslighting. I even just today, as the notes change sign, had an Aries friend who is a channeler in Israel, and he talked about helplessness, and he talked about him running into people who went through types of violence and gaslighting is not the usual, okay, so the parents would beat the child up, which is horrid, and would humiliate them. But it was very, very intricate, very, very psychologically deep. And he said this comes up from both the regime and people to people. And he just wanted to kind of like, hey, turn to help. To which I responded, this also happens in therapy, both conventional and non-conventional. So that's what Pluto has in our, it's like the underbelly that is affecting our intimate life to the health of our vaginas and penises, to the kinks that we like to do in bed, to the how much freedom and how much closeness we want, to whether we choose to live together in a house or not, all the legal things that affect intimate relationships, okay, dating world even, and our art, okay, artistic creative rights, political art, all of those things are going to be. So, of course, it's going to be exposed. We're going to have something that is very similar to the Me Too, but not necessarily around women, okay? Again, Mars is ruled by Rahu, okay? Maybe even people who, and I'm following, there was a war 50 years ago in 1973. I think it was the 6-Day War or Yom Kippur War in Israel. And because it has Chiron return, now they're honoring 50 years to that. And people talk, then I will be looking out to see if something like stuff that came out during the time that the atomic veterans were able to speak comes up. We're probably going to see some war crimes, illegal orders, as well as mistreatment of people who have CPTSD and were kind of, it is no longer PTSD. If you're silenced for 50 years, it's already CPTSD because the silence is part of the trauma. So we're going to have a lot of warriors dealing with traumas, how did it affect their penises, how did it affect their intimate relations, what about, gay people who deal with that, but this is going to be around martial people. And it's going to be public, okay? So we can have a lot of exposure, even men being sexually harassed by men or sexually violated by men, certain rights that were happening as a part of battles, and people are going to expose that. Now, just like when the Me Too came and people say, well, why do you talk about this? Why do you do this? Why do we need to hear it? It's too much information. Or like the Pride walks, okay, or slut walks, then it's going to be now, but with penises in the frontier, okay? So there are many ways that we've been mistreating men and the many things that men have to adopt. And they're going to be more vocal about this, hopefully, and the way that they have been hurt. So all across the board, if you are targeted by this, and your ascendant, let's say Libra, this thing is happening, it's triggering your 7th house. What happens when Ketu is in your 1st and Rahu is in your 7th? It means that you're heading to get you. The only means that you can know yourself in this time, because you're letting go of who you are. All you have to look at, who is the person in front of me, okay? And this gives you a clue. What do I need to change? What do I need to do? Okay, what is in front of me? And it takes, I'm analyzing who is this person in front of me. It doesn't matter who they are. It's how I see them. That either I need to change the way I see them because I need to know more about them, and then I need to know more. Or I need to change the way I see myself. Because, hey, this person in front of me, or even in the most simple cases, like, oh, this person that is, let's say, rejecting me right now, oh, they're having a lot of, their own stuff. And the way that they are behaving right now is just to do, like, the fact that they don't like me, they don't like me. But the fact that they are behaving in this way, or ghosting, or this or that, is to do with them. It's not necessarily to do with me. And I can only discover this when I understand something about them. So but this will not be with the person intimately because of Pluto. Okay, so somebody will write. Some men will write, oh, I'm sick of women having this double standard that if you reject them, then they get offended, but if you ghost them, then they get offended. And you kind of see their own story and kind of like, oh, I've experienced this. That's probably something that also the person that I was dating was going through. It's like, hey, that was a reject. Um, and this can be something as simple as that, and it can get more intricate, okay? As we talk about these psychological issues that affect both our organizations, both the witchcraft on energy worlds, and people doing witchcraft on each other, including people in the academia, which is also a very religious institution in structure, even when the academia is not named like, St. John Hopkins or, and somebody say, it's not singling out St. John Hopkins. It's like they had some good research. But the thing is that academic structure is very based on the church structure. It used to be education for people who are religious. And we still deal with the implications of the fact that we do academia in this structure today. So we're going to see also that stuff coming up. Okay. Now, because right now with this explanation there is Procyon, and Procyon can sweeten things. It can sweeten things in the sense that it can de-escalate certain conflicts. Okay, I repeat, John F. Kennedy had Procyon on his midheaven. He de-escalated basically a nuclear holocaust, okay, of the entire universe. Not universe, but definitely Earth. Because back then we still had, we already had way too much A-bombs. And so Procyon can sweeten, can de-escalate a very deep crisis, political crisis that is occurring. Now we're going to go to the role of astrology there, is that sometimes both psychology, astrology, or whatever means of analysis one uses that could be considered ad hominem or ad societum, if you want to, with this Pluto being ruled by Saturn, they can be used in various contexts. In general, ad hominem is a logical bias. It's judging the person rather than what they are saying. But sometimes understanding that this person is coming from a certain context and there's a very good reason for them to believe the way they believe and act the way they act can help to de-escalate. And to publicly say that, publicly analyze that is not disrespectful. It's saying, oh, this person is coming from this and that background. And they have very good reasons to believe what they believe. And I'm coming from this and that background. And here is a point that we also have to take into account as we try to make synthesis of those different worldviews and accommodate for like all of us. Okay? That can create de-escalation of a conflict. That can help you understand where is this person coming from and validate and acknowledge. Okay? When we do it with political figures, okay, that might like make sense. Or if we have two public figures, and with astrology, it's going to be an astrological world, but also with psychology. I'm really sick and tired of politicians calling each other in all kinds of psychiatric diagnosis. Okay, that is outdated. They're not to blame for it as much as the psychiatric community and psychiatric society. That is outdated, that is not relevant, that is not serving the people who serve other interests. And then politicians just play on that and call each other nicknames and call each other in psychiatric diagnosis, which is useless. But if people really set and acknowledge the different backgrounds that they're coming from publicly, validating but not backing down with their opinion and not using that against somebody, that can actually de-escalate a conflict. Okay, John F. Kennedy must have known that Russia is afraid of the United States taking over the world and fighting communism. He must have known that Russia sees the United States as a threat, and for a very good reason, because the United States did fight any signs of communism within it. It blacklisted people, sometimes for no reason. It witch hunted people. Okay? So you have to think and you have to understand, well, they run the world, they run their world in their way. And if they see us as you know, hey, we did throw 2 A-bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like, we did it first. So now they are seeing this and they're like, well, nothing stops the United States from doing this again. We have to be prepared. Now what do we do with that? How can we acknowledge that and de-escalate? De-escalate. Because they have a very good reason to fear. They're not an irrational opponent. And this is very important. If you're Libra ascendant, your opponent is not irrational. Aries are very, although they're impulsive, although they can be hard-headed, but they are very much having a certain rationale to them. If you can validate this rationale, then you understand. Okay? Another example that's concrete that I can give of sometime that I did it was when I was looking at the dean in our university that was accused and found guilty in sexual harassment, but kept on working. He's kind of like retired. Then I portrayed what I know, what is known. And what is known that he is a man who was in his, I think, 50s or 60s, I think even more. And he founded this place, and the academic discourse is incredibly competitive. Okay? He did not have the skills that we are only learning about how to communicate, about will and consent, about like all these things. All he knew was something that now we consider human trafficking, is my addition today, but that is all he knew. And the structure was so much so that indeed people would do anything vile because it's so competitive to get. So you cannot have actual intimacy with anyone. You cannot have intimacy because everyone is out to get you. Okay? And so, no skill, and he fell in love with someone. Okay? What needs to change is both skills and structure. How come he has the power to not let somebody go, which was the case, to basically imprison someone under his authority? That is something that's way more concerning than the fact that he did not have the skill to communicate with the other sex and to respect and honor the boundaries of the other sex. Okay? This is not me invalidating him, but this is also not me backing down to his atrocities that he committed. Okay? This was not the offender that was my offender. It's just another case that we had in university. So that is a public discussion. It's not a private discussion. I'm sorry, it's not about Pluto means that the structure, that religion, that witchcraft is involved, and this is a public discussion. Okay? One of the reasons that I talk about non-specific return to sender, non-specific energy defense, is because at this time, and we're going to have this, at this time, people, if somebody is psychically attacking, okay? Especially now with Aries being involved. What's more easy than to take two people that are in conflicting situation, okay? So let's say there is a couple, and then because it's Venus, Mars, so there is a couple, and then one is a man, one is a woman, okay? Then there is another woman, okay? Now, this other woman may be related, may not be related. What is more easy than for someone who is even bored, even a being, okay, to get at that, okay, the couple, the woman from the couple, and psychically attack her and make her think that this was another woman. And that can be a man, and it can be, for example, a man that wanted something with that woman, but she was rejecting him. Okay, and now he can take on a certain energy and say, oh, let's make this woman think that some other lady attacked. Okay, and or that some other man attacked. It can be with like sexes reversed or whatnot, or the same sex. And now what happens? That woman, what would she do? She would return to sender to some woman who didn't send her anything. Okay, and maybe is even trying to avoid certain energies from her husband. And so she would send this down this one. Now what will happen to the third party? The third party will be pissed. She will diagnose who sent this. And this will say, oh, it's this woman. What does she want from me? Okay, poof, you send it back. Okay. And those are beginning to be very satirical, but not funny at all things. Not funny at all things. And so when you do it non-specific, like I'm not targeting anyone in particular, anybody that sends anything that is not nourishing, not supportive, they send it back to the person who actually sent it. I don't need to know who. To the person who actually said, I don't need to, I'm not a diagnosis, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a this, I'm not a that. Whoever sent this, they get this back, okay? With the ability for them to repent and whatnot, so that they will be like better people. I'm not here to hurt anybody. So this is something that we also want to cultivate at this time, because Pluto is witchcraft, Saturn is witchcraft, so we're going to have a lot of people having this weird stuff, like who said this, who said that. Okay, with astrology, we can be centered and understand that something is happening in our charts. If you're Libra ascendant, you're particularly susceptible to the situation where it is in favor of humanity that you will expose what happened between you and John Doe or Jane Doe in person, but publicly. You will feel compelled to write this. Things will come to you. You will feel all kinds of things that you are learning regarding this. It will be sudden. It will be fated. If you are if you have been chosen, you will know it. And I want to say this because in most cases, yeah, you should judge what the person is saying, not who is saying this. Of course, you don't want to use somebody's chart against them, but it is also useless. Two people born with literally the same ascendant on the minute with the same chart can do two completely different things with this chart. One of them can be a killer, one of them can be a humanitarian. Okay, so it's useless. Okay, it's not. It can, if you know that somebody did something bad, then you can say, oh, I can see it here, I can see it here, but they could have done other things with it. So that's not how we use it. It's more so to understand, okay, this person has dealt with this, has dealt with that. Okay, the one time that I looked at the chart that's around the chart of the person who was my friend from academia, I said, okay, let's look what's in there. And they saw what's in there, so it's like, oh my God, that person dealing with so much things. It doesn't matter what, it's not the point to delineate that, but it's like, oh, the person dealing with so much things. Okay, now I have more compassion. Now I understand. I will not back down. I will not, not say what I have to say. But I also understand that I can have compassion to just a person that's going through something very, very intense. And when I see a graph, it's kind of helped me to visualize, kind of like, okay, I can get that. I can get that. Okay? That is okay. And of course, mostly you would not need to do something like this publicly, but sometimes to say occasionally, yeah, this unknown I'll go, or something like that, it's like, that's reasonable with humans. I don't see a reason to hide this, as long as you don't just kind of take the chart and, push it at the other to, just like you wouldn't do with psychology, okay? You're not taking psychological insight about the person, kind of use this against them, because then you are the problem. But with Procyon here, I'm actually more optimistic on this particular lunation, that the things that are being exposed with the reasoning of sweetening the conflict, okay, of de-escalating. And here the de-escalation is to do with Mars and Venus. Here's the de-escalation on a political level of certain conflicts even between men and women. Okay, so de-escalation, that is thanks to this presence of Procyon there that is able to, lift from the gutter. And in this case, we must understand that the means of de-escalation um, will come up in ways that are unusual because this thing is squaring Aries. And so Aries can do something that can cause a lot of discord, but she actually meant to to shed light, okay, to shed light on the situation so that people will discuss this. There may be a bit of a controversy, but now it's going to be out in the open. And it's kind of like, let's create this discord so that we can raise this point, so that we can actually sweeten, okay, with this Procyon. And then Aries needs the discord, and Procyon understands, okay, Procyon is not about, it's about sweetening. It's not about oppressing or negating, okay? So Procyon will let Aries do her thing and try to sweeten the conflict. Will let Pluto do its thing and try to sweeten the conflict around it. Okay? It's a very blessed. It's not an easy one. It's a very blessed. On an astrological level, yeah, we may see how astrology is being used to allow certain discourse to come up and sweeten the thing around it. Okay, for example, if one person treats, now Pluto is in the Capricorn. Okay, for Aquarius ascendant, it is in the 12th house. For Pisces ascendant, when it's in Aquarius, it will be in the 12th house. Okay, so there's absolutely a way you can look. Oh, there's this person that has had Pluto in the 12th house. I can see that their solution has to do with hierarchy, with standardization. Okay, I have Pluto in Aquarius. Me, Shirley, Pisces ascendant. So I can see that my solution will definitely be to rebel the status quo. Both of us are not unteachable. Now I can understand where they're coming from, where I'm coming from, and also be cautious because if Pluto is in my 12th house and we're talking standardizations, there's some good things to it, like, not sleeping with the patient as a psychologist is not a bad ethics. Okay, to think that some organization can enforce it is bad ethics because it's actually not happening. And so having ethics around something, and so there are certain things that I have to contribute to the discourse because I've seen how those mental things, his 12th house, require this deliverance of expression, but also I need to understand that I will tend to contradict simply because my experience, my field of experience is such that is contradicting the status quo, as well as it is my 12th house. So I'm going to need to pay attention. I'm going to need to get to know my 12th house more to understand how my solutions, sometimes this is good, what I suggest, sometimes I need to learn more because the people can be very oppressive themselves, not just the tyranny of, a leader, but also the tyranny of the people. Okay? That is a more fair way to do this. It's not done to say something to somebody's face. It's more done to have an open discussion, and it's quite fair to expose where do people come from and what could be the pros and cons of a certain argument. Okay? It's going to be like those things are going to happen publicly, particularly with this one for Libra ascendants. The people who will need to understand the other in such a deep level are going to be Libra ascendants. Ketu is in their first house, Rahu is in their 7th. So the Aries counterpart, as well as the Aries with the E, okay, the goddess of discord, they will need to understand themselves in terms of they're being reactionist, they're being responsive to whatever is happening in their 7th. Because of Pluto and Aries, it will be public. It's not because they're seeking tabloids, is because the personal is the political, and it's amoral not to raise this into discussion when the discussion is about what happens in bed, what happens with penis and vagina, what happens to the penis and vagina after you have gender affirming experience, what happens to your libido after gender affirming operation. Those things are public. And if there's one person that deals with this like this and the other that deals with this like that, to pinpoint what could affect this is also important. And that might be very, this is very juicy, tabloid, whatnot, but this is also a very serious discussion that needs to be addressed. If we talk about war crimes or illegal orders, there's more Martian issues, or the way having PTSD affects your penis, or people that were forced to take like Pfizer, Viagra during the Arab Spring even. Okay, and rape people. Some of them died, or they might expose why. Okay, it's not that all were like brutalist rapists. Like, if you're threatened and somebody would rape your child if you don't rape these, women, then it's a problem. Okay, and this is more the type of conversations that we need to understand. It's not only that there are this pack of really bad people. There are also intricacies going on there. And how do we raise this into discourse? And for many people, it will be children that suddenly talk about, their parents doing something or whatnot, and can be around war or something like this. And or a person who was a very high commander, and then their child or the level could say, okay, they were not respecting of my sexual boundaries. I understand that they have trauma, that they have this, that they have PTSD, that they have whatnot, but I also deserve to be respected. I should not suffer trauma because of this. And those are very, very intimate conversations that have to be public. It has to be public. For it to change, people need a discourse. It has to be public. It's not people looking for the tabloids here. Whether it's men or women, they're not after being like yellow, not in that sense, more in the solar plexus, heal my, I alone define who I am, kind of, taken from Tom Jacobs, kind of yellow. Okay, it's just yellow is the color of the solar plexus chakra. And the rules that we usually abide by are not relevant to when we're going to have Rahu with Aries in Aries. Or Rahu with Aries, for those who do non-zodiacal astrology, which is also a field and work with Aries, we're going to have an eclipse on the nodes with Aries. And we're having Aries squaring this lunation. We're having Aries still squaring Pluto. Even if you take out the zodiac, what did you expect? I mean, of course, there is discourse, of course, and this has to be so that humanity will get out of its stagnation. And it's very uncomfortable. So, we're very thankful that we have Procyon. We had Procyon with this formation. And it's very important to also raise the voice and raise the concern that we're not trying, at least if we see something unusual, don't immediately think, oh, this is yellow. Oh, this is yellow pages. Oh, this is just, paparazzi. Or this is just, oh, why are they doing this? Why is like, oh, this is too much information. No, there is an issue that is to be addressed here, and it may create great discomfort with you, but it needs to be addressed. And it has to do also with religion, and like governments and stuff, and even spiritual work, how is it being used, and so on and so forth. So if we dismiss that with, oh, they're being yellow, oh, they're doing ad hominem, oh, why are they talking about this, like, oh, they're just looking for attention, we are really setting ourselves up to, that did not age well. okay, in 8 years or so. Or with Mars, I don't know Mars, like does he have like the petals or something like Venus? And I don't know how long it takes. But this one is gonna be with Mars, but also Venus cycle, because Venus is retrograde. We're definitely gonna have that did not age well. And with Aries here, Aries takes 500 years to surround the zodiac. So if you're in the wrong side of history right now, maybe it helped you. 500 years from now, people will look at you and say, oh, of course Da Vinci had it right. He was doing both channeling and observing like what happens to people in reality and describing that. And that was way more scientific than, to just channel as people were doing in academia at his time. They were just channeling it. He was like, what the fuck? But he was also channeling and he was also studying, observing. Okay? So with Aries, people like, you're gonna do something stupid, you're gonna dismiss somebody, for using a way that you don't use to gain information, or for talking, or for mentioning, or for studying something you're not studying. And that one is around Venus and Mars, so penis, vaginas, sexual health, gender affirming operations and their effect on sexual health, on fertility, and so on and so forth. War and its effect on our erection or the lack of, and so on. I recently discovered there are erectile tissues in the ears for some people. Some people cough when they touch it, and some people have orgasm. So there is erectile tissue in the ear for those who are interested. But no, don't irrigate it with Q-tips, because that's less healthy. Anyway, it's just Procyon sweetening. Hey, you can come from your ears. So, back to this. Well, Aries is 500-year cycle. So you're gonna, people that won't talk about this, when you're long gone, people are gonna say, 500 years now, who were these stupid people that didn't get that? Who were these stupid people that dismissed that? Okay, you don't want to be one of them. And that includes your own insights and theories. Aries moon hard aspects are also, which we just had, are also connected with the type of scientists that have a scientific discovery. Like Einstein, he discovered certain things about, quantum reality, whatnot. And he had a hard time to accepting his own invention, his own discovery. So that can mean that we can discover something, we can have a hard time to accept that, that this is true. Okay? If we're not imagining. So, yeah. So that is also something to kind of keep in mind. And it's just one of these times. So I'm very thankful for Tal for kind of bringing this up, because it's a very important point. When we have Rahu and Ketu on penis and vagina, stuff is going to get discussion-y, okay? And people are going to be both tempted to downplay this and to dismiss this, and to say that everybody that mentions this, or it adds a bit of humor around this, is being seeking attention, seeking discord, seeking this, seeking that. And that's absolutely not the case, because there are certain things where we really had enough of having enough, and they were not talked about in the discourse. And now people do need to speak about this. And yes, astrology is going to come in handy. What we don't want to do is to use something against the person to sort of take a person down, because what we actually want is not to take a person down, but to discuss a certain behavior and to try and see where do other people come from. Okay? And still, what do we do about this? Because we do need to do something about this, because we've had enough of having enough. So happy lunation.